Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning and good afternoon to all participants joining us today, and a very warm welcome to the first Africa-Caricom Summit of Heads of State and Government. The summit emanates from a meeting between His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, and CARICOM Heads of Government that was held in August 2019 in Bridgetown, Barbados, and recognizes the common heritage between the two regions and the need for cooperation in order to leverage opportunities for development and shared opportunities. Our theme this year is Unity Across Continents and Oceans, Opportunities for Deepening Integration. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, may I now invite His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya and President in Office of the Summit of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States, OACPS, who is also the chairperson of the summit, to make his opening statement and carry on with the program. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, all invited guests. Let me say what a great honor and privilege it is to welcome all of you to this inaugural African CARICOM Summit. And I want to extend my sincere gratitude to each one of you here today for taking time out of your very busy schedules to attend this historic summit, which seeks to unite people of African descent across continents. In the interest of time and due to the tight schedule, I would just like to outline the proposed program for today. Our first segment will feature opening statements from myself, the chairperson of the African Union, and also the chairperson of CARICOM. This will be followed by statements from regional leaders under the second segment, and thereafter we will move to our third segment, where I will invite other heads of state and government present to provide their input in the plenary session. This session will be followed by our fourth segment, which will have statements from heads of regional and international organizations, and this will draw our deliberations to a close, upon which the Kenyan Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs will present the key outcomes of our deliberations and close the summit. So, Excellencies, let me proceed now and make my opening statement. Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellency Dr. Carla Natalie Barnett, Secretary. Kenya is indeed grateful and feels honored to host this inaugural summit of what I believe is the first of many such summits to follow in the future in our efforts to strengthen the cords of unity of the African peoples across the world. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, between the 16th and the 19th century, 10 to 12 million enslaved Africans were transported across the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas and the Caribbean. United by our heritage, King Jr., and I quote, "We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools," end of quote. African and Caribbean cultural and political ties run deep based on our shared history, culture, as well as a sense of our common identity. Our common historical experience of slavery and colonialization inspired Africa's founding fathers to form the Pan-African movement in the 1900s. This movement was championed by the Africans in the diaspora, which established the foundations of a rich and vibrant African-Caribbean relationship. So today, let us come together and seize the moment to harness the tremendous potential of this unique relationship into a powerful social, economic, cultural, and political force. Allow me, Your Excellencies, to outline a few areas where we can work together to achieve this goal. I do believe that the first area is the blue economy. Both Africa and the Caribbean regions are blessed with enormous resources in the blue economy. The African continent has 38 coastal states and island states, and a coastline of well over 47,000 kilometers. All members of states of CARICOM, they enjoy access to approximately 1 million square miles of the Caribbean Sea. This presents enormous opportunities to strengthen and foster innovative partnerships across the two regions to sustainably exploit and harness the potential of the blue economy. Excellencies, sustainable exploitation of these resources will no doubt boost economic prosperity, expand creation of decent jobs, and strengthen food security in our two regions. The second area, Excellencies, is climate change. Climate change remains an existential threat to all of us. In Africa, extreme swings in temperatures and rainfall patterns have, for instance, significantly increased habitat sustainability for biting insects and the transmission of vector-borne diseases such as dengue fever, malaria, as well as yellow fever. An estimated 94% of global malaria deaths occur in Africa, an epidemic that often occurs after periods of unusually heavy rain. The warming up of our continent is allowing malaria-carrying mosquitoes to survive these days at much higher altitudes. Similarly, in the Caribbean region, climate extremes in the last few decades have had devastating impacts on economies and livelihoods and have led to the rise in sea levels and increased ocean acidification. Your Excellencies, it is imperative that together we incorporate climate action into our national policies and long-term development plans and adopt global best practices to mitigate and adapt to the threats posed by climate change. The third area is health and the COVID-19 pandemic. The outbreak of this pandemic has redefined health systems across the developing world and reshaped our health responses to pandemics. In Africa, as well as across the Caribbean region, the pandemic has overstretched our health systems and challenged our traditional approaches to public health. While the number of COVID-19 fatalities are relatively low in our two regions, we are struggling to obtain the much-needed COVID-19 vaccines. In fact, in the early days of the pandemic, we experienced serious challenges with the supply of personal protective equipment, medical oxygen, as well as ventilators. This, my brothers and sisters, is a wake-up call for all of us in the developing world. We must do what it is to build our own manufacturing capacity for vaccines and critical medical supplies. And in addition, we must strengthen research, surveillance, and monitoring capacity in order to mount effective responses to COVID-19 and other possible pandemics in the future. The fourth area is debt sustainability. Debt levels are rising across the world with worrying and unsustainable increases in the poorer countries. Several countries in the Caribbean region have been among the most indebted in the world since gaining independence in the 1960s. Similarly, debt sustainability remains a huge challenge to many African countries, a problem that has been compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we need to come together to build on the G20 debt service suspension initiative and the progress achieved in facilitating higher pandemic-related spending by inter-ally proactively seeking strategies to increase revenues, while at the same time prioritizing our spending that enhances the productive capacities of our respective economies. And this clearly is a task that calls for resourcefulness and innovativeness in the face of the pandemic. The fifth and last area, Excellencies, that I would call us all to focus on is technology. Technology provides endless opportunities to leapfrog our economies. With a few exceptions, the fintech industry is quite underdeveloped in both our regions. About 66% of the African adult population is unbanked, while in the Caribbean region, the fintech startup ecosystem is still evolving. We have, Excellencies, an opportunity to develop collaborations that will enable us to create a raft of tech-based products and solutions that will promote financial inclusion by providing improved access to affordable and efficient financial services, especially to the unbanked. So, Your Excellencies, today we're taking the first of our baby steps in what promises to be an incredible journey in forging closer ties with Africans at home, those in the diaspora, as well as all people of African descent. Moving forward, I want to assure all of you of Kenya's commitment to spearheading this journey towards the shared prosperity of all our people. I thank you all, and I want to wish you all the most fruitful deliberations as we move forward. I would like at this stage to give the floor to His Excellency President Felix Tshisekedi who is currently the chair of the AU. He's delayed. Apparently he's not with us. So I'll give the floor directly to His Excellency Gaston Brown, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Chairman of CARICOM, as we await the arrival of our Chairman of the African Union. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, my dear brother and friend, other distinguished heads, Secretaries General of the African Union and CARICOM, brothers and sisters of Africa and the Caribbean. Forgive me for not dwelling on the formalities. As you're fully aware, I have been allocated 5 minutes, and I believe all of you would like me to make the best of my time. I start from the premise that Europe underdeveloped Africa and left the Caribbean underdeveloped. In essence, they left us with a legacy of poverty, of malnutrition, and illiteracy. Today, through their control of the global financial, economic, and trading systems, the major European nations and their North American allies continue to hold Africa, the Caribbean, and other developing countries in a trap of underdevelopment. Let us be clear, there was never trade between Africa and the Caribbean. They traded our ancestors, colleagues. Previous generations of our people could do little to alter the situation, although through their many rebellions in the Caribbean and battles of resistance in Africa, they struggled valiantly, paying with their lives. Our generation should not allow these systems that control us, that constrain us, and capture us to continue. This is starkly illustrated by the global control by a few rich nations of the production and distribution of vital vaccines to suppress the COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas 70% of the European Union and almost 60% of North Americans are fully vaccinated, only 3% of Africans can say the same. This pattern of inequity is obvious in its ugliness and prevalence. Therefore, we must act together to change it. We must establish structures of cooperation to promote our mutual socioeconomic interests, increasing investment and trade, and people-to-people exchanges between Africa and the Caribbean. We should resist being pushed to the margins of international decision-making and collaborate on decisions to restructure the global financial architecture and global taxation, de-risking, climate change, the blue economy, sustainable debt, reparations, among others. The success with the African Union's medical supplies platform, the AMSP, which provided life-saving vaccines to the Caribbean people, for which we are all eternally grateful, has shown that we have the capacity to cooperate and collaborate. Colleagues, we have it within our power to demand change in the international system and to fight for it and to make it happen, but only if we act harmoniously. Between the nations of the African Union and CARICOM, we have a population of approximately 1.4 billion people with great natural and wealth-creating resources, including oil, gas, agriculture, minerals, forestry, tourism, fisheries, and much more. We are the suppliers of vital commodities to the global community and a strong market for the goods and services of the European market as well as North America. But we need to utilize those resources for our own benefit rather than to preside over extractive economies. Additionally, together, we have the voting power of 69 nations in the United Nations and all of some subsidiary organizations, including the World Trade Organization. And I refer to that group as the group of 69, the G69. We have global bargaining power, but only if we use it effectively. If we sit in that power, then clearly we will continue to be marginalized. That is why I now make the following 4 interwoven proposals for this meeting to consider. First, we should create a forum of African and Caribbean territories and states under the acronym FACTS, managed jointly by the Secretariats of the African Union and CARICOM. Second, we should nominate this day, September 7th, in every year going forward as Africa-Caricom Day. Third, every year hereafter, we should repeat this Africa-Caricom Summit on this day, September 7th, to analyze the global situation and our place within it, and also to discuss initiatives and programs, and to authorize joint actions. Fourth, we should charge the Secretariats of the African Union and CARICOM to present to us within the next 6 months for approval at our meeting next year, the founding charter and a memorandum of operation of our forum, including proposals to overcome existing obstacles to trade and investment. Consideration should be given to a multilateral air services agreement and an investment protection, as well as a double taxation agreement between African and CARICOM countries. And all visa requirements that pertain today should be abolished. Africans and Caribbeans should be allowed to move freely. Should we agree to establish these pillars of collaboration, I urge both secretariats not to over-bureaucratize these initiatives, but obviously to keep our arrangements lean and efficacious. Colleagues, let us now create the pathways of accord between Africa and the Caribbean, an accord worthy of our historic contemporary struggles to overcome the legacy of racism, colonialism, exploitation, and discrimination. We are the branches of a single tree created from the same roots. And as Caribbeans, we look forward to that welcomed return as repatriated Africans. Let us, as that one tree, reach to the skies together, strong, resilient, and unshakable. Colleagues, we can do it. Let us all commit ourselves to this task. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that statement, and indeed a very encouraging proposal that this should be an annual summit. And I look forward to the concurrence of the rest on this wonderful proposal. Before we move on, I have been told by our technical staff, probably at this stage, to request all of us who are online to switch on their cameras for a virtual photo shoot, which will take just about a minute. So I'd just like to request everybody who is online to turn your camera on. Excellent. Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. I would like now to give the floor to His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and the immediate former chairperson of the African Union, to give his remarks. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you, Your Excellency, President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Her Excellency Dr. Carla Natalie Burnett, Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, and His Excellency Mr. Gaston Brown, Chairperson of CARICOM. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to be part of this historic first Africa-Caricom Summit. This initiative places us on the threshold of what I would call a new epoch of integration, unity, and cooperation. It calls to mind the words of one of the great leaders of our continent, the founding father of our sister country, Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta, when he said, "Our children may learn about the heroes of the past. Our task is to make ourselves architects of the future." Your Excellency, President Kenyatta, this summit presents a reimagining of the future of relations between our peoples, the African continent, and in the Caribbean, who, although separated by a vast ocean, are united by a shared history. This summit is taking place in the first year of the decade of African roots and diaspora, which was declared in February this year at the 34th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the African Union. The diaspora is an integral part of the story of Africa, the progress of Africa, and indeed, the future of Africa. Greater cooperation between the countries on the African continent and the Caribbean community was espoused by our forebears who convened the 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945. It was there that leaders like Mzee Jomo Kenyatta and Kwame Nkrumah planted the seed that would become the Organization of African Unity in 1963. In this sense, we are fulfilling, as we are gathered here, an important aspiration of the pioneers of Pan-Africanism, and within a contemporary context of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Our common heritage should encourage us to deepen our engagement, strengthen trade and investment, collaborate in research and development, and share expertise and knowledge amongst our countries. Just as we share a common history, we also have common challenges. We are all contending with the devastating human, social, political, and economic effects of COVID-19 pandemic. We are all working to overcome the effects of colonialism and underdevelopment by building inclusive economies and creating more opportunities for our people. We are all vulnerable to the effects of climate change through rising sea levels, adverse weather effects, and social and economic disruption. This pandemic has demonstrated the value and the necessity of confronting challenges by working together. From the onset of the pandemic, we developed a united African continental response strategy. We established a special COVID-19 response fund and launched the groundbreaking African Medical Supplies Platform. We also set up the African Vaccine Access Task Team, which has distinguished itself by mobilizing vaccines for the African continent and the Caribbean. We share a determination that when it comes to vaccines and other critical health interventions, no region, no country, and no person should be left behind. It is therefore a matter of great significance that Caribbean countries joined other African countries in utilizing the platforms the African Union has set up to acquire medical supplies as well as vaccines. Just as we have worked together to access medical supplies and vaccine doses for our peoples, we need to share experiences. We also need to share expertise and technology to better respond to COVID-19, as well as future pandemics. We must mobilize the global community behind the call for a temporary waiver of the TRIPS agreement at the World Trade Organization, and must continue to lobby for partnerships on licensing and technology transfer with those countries that have the capacity to produce their own vaccines. Gone must be the time now when Africa and the Caribbean will need to be sourcing medical supplies and vaccines from other lands and continents that do not have the same perspective or full solidarity that we have. The pandemic has shown what is possible when principled solidarity is put to the service of the common good. Let us draw on this solidarity as we rebuild our economies. We should, in particular, explore the opportunities that are presented by the African Continental Free Trade Area to advance our aspirations towards economic integration and shared prosperity. Through this partnership, We should work to transform the fortunes of all the people of Africa and all the people of African descent in the Caribbean. Through our actions, we must become the architects of our common future, where Africa and the Caribbean are joined together by a common goal of ensuring that our peoples have prosperity. I thank you, and I want to support the proposal that this summit must become an annual feature. Africa. It is important that the bonds of history continue into the future, seeing it through this one, we will be able to deepen our partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your very encouraging words. And I want to pay a special tribute to yourself for the leadership that you showed and how you led us in a very difficult year during your term as chair of the African Union, and indeed your willingness and openness to ensuring that we work together with the Caribbean in our drive towards ensuring that we get access to vaccines for all our people. So, Your Excellency, thank you very much. At this juncture, I'd like now to give the floor to His Excellency, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and the immediate former chairperson of CARICOM, and I yield the floor to you, my brother.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Your Excellencies, colleagues, friends, a very good day and welcome to this historic occasion. Today's high-level engagement between CARICOM and Africa is indeed a historic one. It's fitting that this summit is being held during the United Nations International Decade for People of African Descent, 1st of January 2015 to the 31st of December 2024. I wish to thank His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta for the sterling efforts that have brought us to this juncture. We must also acknowledge, apart from our centuries-old ties, the many African and Caribbean architects and champions of closer political, social, economic, and cultural linkages between and among our sovereign states. Africa has been CARICOM's invaluable partner in several platforms, such as the United Nations, within the Group of 77, and in our dealings with Europe under the umbrella of what is now the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. United, we have known success. Closer collaboration will undoubtedly be to our mutual benefit, whether it be in pursuing development finance, resource utilization, and debt sustainability, maximizing the green and blue economies, the United Nations Security Council reform with Africa and small island developing states adequately positioned, or in the existential fight against climate change, the effects of which are wreaking havoc the world over and exacerbating our peculiar vulnerabilities. We look forward, therefore, to a meaningful outcome in Glasgow at COP26, working alongside our global partners. As chairman of CARICOM during the first half of this year, I can attest to the value of closer collaboration between our regions. As COVID-19 ravaged the social and economic fabric of our nations, CARICOM prioritized the early sourcing of COVID-19 vaccines to inoculate as many people as possible before additional threats, such as new variants, presented themselves. The prevailing vaccine inequity, commonly called vaccine apartheid, stymied that plan. I therefore wish to register my sincere gratitude to His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, and His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, co-chair of this summit. Also President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo of Ghana, for the meaningful discussions and interventions during my tenure and the pragmatic solutions arrived at in the face of this global health crisis. Thankfully, last month, CARICOM began to receive a substantial allocation of vaccines under the African Medical Supplies Platform. Thank you, Africa. I am pleased to confirm that my country's first tranche was received on 19th August 2021. Trinidad and Tobago's linkages to Africa run deep, as marked by our bilateral relationships, observer status at the African Union, high commissions in Nigeria and South Africa, and honorary consuls in Ghana and Kenya. Soon, we too will avail ourselves of the magnanimous gesture of the government of Kenya to provide office space for CARICOM's diplomatic presence in Africa, a tangible manifestation of the commitment to engage Africa's sixth region as reflected in your Blueprint for Development Vision 2063. It's been long in coming to this point today, but it's a continuation of that journey outlined by our own George Padmore, CLR James, Dr. Eric Eustace Williams, and many others who anticipated that this milestone could be reached to strengthen us in an increasingly hostile world. Notably, our country's Vision 2030, finalized during my administration's first term in office, highlights deepening the relationship with Africa, among other partners. We have strong people-to-people ties and have welcomed distinguished African leaders to our shores, with the most recent in 2019 being His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo of Ghana. I had the privilege of undertaking an official visit to Ghana in 2016 and building on the African Energy Initiative spearheaded by former Prime Minister Patrick Manning, sharing over 160 years of experience in the energy sector. We welcome the inclusion on today's agenda of trade and investment and highlight the symbiotic relationship that exists with improving transport connectivity. While digital functionality is an imperative, with online platforms such as this being ubiquitous, in-person exchanges will boost our trade, investment, and tourism activities. We believe that there is scope also for immediate closer cooperation in the areas of finance and agriculture. In the financial services sector, some advances have already been made. Our Trinidad and Tobago's Republic Bank Limited acquired in April 2018 the majority shareholding of HFC Bank of Ghana Limited as part of its aim to be a key player in corporate banking internationally. We therefore look forward to continued investment in both directions. We in CARICOM are actively engaged in discussions to establish an investment fund to unlock and sustain our development programs. We trust that Africa will invest with us as we are indelibly imprinted with Africa in us. There's also scope for collaboration in the creative sector, which has been particularly hard hit by the pandemic. Africa and the Caribbean have gifted the world with exceptional talent, be it in music, publishing, film, or fashion. Let us strengthen the links between our region's creative industries, a sector described by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, as having the capacity to be, and I quote, drivers of cultural, economic, and social outputs for sustainable development, unquote. We must also seek out ways to mend the socio-cultural dissonance derived from the legacy of slavery. Educational programs, the development and promotion of genealogy, of heritage tracing may prove instrumental in finding and filling the knowledge and familial gaps. In closing, I look forward to deepening our strategic partnership in the best interests of our citizenry. I wish to close by quoting the great Kwame Nkrumah, who said, and I quote, "I am not Africa because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me," unquote. Thank you, colleagues, and I look forward to the continuation of this long and successful journey.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those very encouraging remarks. The key message there being the need for all of us to forge much closer ties between our two peoples. Your Excellencies, I've just had word that both our chair, President Felix Tshisekedi of the Democratic Republic of Congo, who is also the chairperson of the African Union, and His Excellency Nana Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana and chairperson of ECOWAS, are currently chairing an emergency meeting of ECOWAS to discuss the unfortunate situation that has taken place in Guinea-Conakry. And I have been told that they will attempt to join us if they are able to conclude on time. So on their behalf, both had confirmed attendance, but I think we can accept their apology given the crisis that I have just referred to. So I will now give the floor to my sister, Her Excellency Mia Moore Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, and the incoming chairperson of UNCTAD, to make her remarks. My sister, you have the floor.
Thank you, my brother Uhuru, and I sincerely hope that our brothers will join us shortly, but we all know the exigencies of the offices of state, and we hope that they can join us, as I said, and that they will be successful in their deliberations elsewhere. I think, my brother, when we met in Barbados in August of 2019 and first conceptualized this Africa Union CARICOM summit, it was because we know that this is our future and this is where we have to carry our people. Your continent is our ancestral home, and we are related to you, as I just heard from Prime Minister Rowley, in so many ways, because Africa is in us and we're not simply from Africa. But I want not only to dwell on the separate ourselves from mental slavery, the mental slavery that has us seeing north only, the mental slavery that has us trading north only, the mental slavery that has us not recognizing that between our 1/3 of the nations of the world, the mental slavery that has prevented direct trade links or direct air transport between Africa and the Caribbean, the mental slavery that has blocked us from reclaiming our Atlantic destiny and forging our future in the image and in the interest of our people. Africa is the youngest continent on the earth. You have 60% of your people under the age of 25. Our Caribbean region continues to be lacking in the numbers of persons to drive development as our people need it and need to have it. And why do I say so? Guyana is the size of the United Kingdom, but has the population of 800,000 as opposed to the United Kingdom's 65 million. The Netherlands is 17 million and smaller than Suriname, but Suriname's population is just over 600,000. Belize is the size of Israel, but has the population that is a dwarf in comparison to Israel's 8 million. Belize around 400,000. And my own Barbados, approximately 20% smaller than Singapore, which took that additional 20% through land reclamation, but its population is 5 million as compared to our 300,000. There is obviously a demographic dividend that Africa will reap but there is obviously bridges that must be forged in our own deliberate 21st century interests if we are to drive development in CARICOM and in Africa, working cooperatively together. And why do I say so? 76 years ago, when the United Nations and the international financial institutions of the Bretton Woods were formed, we didn't even exist. No one thought of us. Our interests are not protected in the construction or in the constitution of those agencies and institutions. And 76 years later, in spite of us becoming independent nations, we continue to suffer from that lack of equity and lack of fair participation in those institutions, particularly in forging their policy framework and their programs that can support countries like ours that face multiple crises, some of them existential. We face the climate crisis together, recognizing that no longer can the battle be fought on behalf of small island developing states alone, but must now also reflect those countries between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn. Why? Because regrettably, small island developing states have not been able to motivate the world to save us by telling the world that it cannot move beyond 1.5 degrees because we need an increase limited and capped at 1.5 degrees if we are to survive. The multiple storms and floods, my brother, that you have seen across Africa, and the multiple hurricanes and droughts and sargassum weed that you see across the Caribbean reinforce that we are the victims of that climate crisis that we did not create, that are the victims of the same greed that caused the extraction of wealth from our countries across both sides of the Atlantic in order to enrich those who sought to have a development projection based on that extraction of our wealth and the use of primary commodities to continue to be the basis for them to add value that way exceeds that which we receive for primary commodities. It is up to us to make these changes. We know them well. And we continue not only to face the climate crisis, as I said, we face now jointly the pandemic. And while we fight this current pandemic against the background of vaccine inequity and apartheid, against the absence of global leadership so that we could have found a way to fight the battle against the very variants, we do so conscious that there are other pandemics that are likely to confront us. And indeed, I chair on behalf of the World Health Organization, the One Health Global Initiative that is fighting against what will come to be regarded as the slow motion pandemic, the battle against antimicrobial resistance, because it is expected to be the biggest killer of our citizens by the year 2050 because of our body's resistance to antibiotics, whether we ingest them as humans or whether we eat them from the food and the meat and vegetables that we eat, or whether they affect our environment because of the impact on runoff. We equally fight the battles of violence, whether violence born or arisen as a result of terrorism or as a result of social implosion because of poverty and lack of development opportunities. And we equally fight the battle, regrettably, of access to concessional financing that is affordable and that is capable of being the platform for our development. Why do I say so? Because at the end of the day, when a country like Ghana and a country like Greece go to the international capital markets, how do we explain them having the same international credit ratings, but Ghana having to borrow at multiple times more than the cost that Greece borrows at, simply because Greece belongs to the European Union and the international financial community values the definition of safe assets, which are within the European Union, in a way that Africa and the Caribbean do not have access to these safe assets. I hope that we will continue to work together to reverse these fortunes. And I'm comforted by the meetings that I had with the African ministers of finance earlier this year and the work of the predecessor in the chair of the development committee at the World Bank and the IMF, the Minister of Finance from Ghana, who, like us, recognize that we have to spend the time to do the heavy lifting and to create the definitions that will allow for a level playing field with respect to the cost of borrowing in our region. But these are not the only things that bring us together. The truth is that there are so many other things that have economic value that we have not even started to touch the surface with. We need to be able to visit our countries. Caribbean people want to see Africa, and African people need to see the Caribbean. We need to be able to work together, not just in the interest of a colonial civil service or because people brought us here against our will. We need to do it as a matter of choice and as a matter of economic destiny. We need equally to recognize that our common habits in food, our common likes in food, from yam and cassava to jollof rice to pilau, to the influence of immigrants from other parts of the world, have made our regions rich. And at the very time when much of the developed world spends time in the luxury and leisure of food, our people continue to starve to have access to food as they face hunger on too many fronts. Let us use that very same food to create the economic wealth and prosperity in circumstances where it is not simply exported as raw valueless commodities, but those that have added value to be able to make the benefits accrue to our people. Let us recognize that cricket is a global game, and whether it is in Rwanda or Kenya, that we need to be able to have more people playing cricket. And we in the Caribbean can continue to bring our prowess there to be able to have the benefit of more cricket playing nations out of Africa and the African diaspora. Let us equally recognize that the opportunities of technology have shown that it is possible to leapfrog aspects of our development. We continue to admire Kenya and all of those others who have used mobile technology to be able to facilitate the bankless and those excluded from financial institutions in our region, and allowing them now to be able to provide for themselves and their families by using technology to be able to access it. But let us equally learn from each other. We in Barbados have for almost the last century found ways of titling land for our people who are in possession of land without title, such that they may convert that possession of land to be able to leverage it in order to improve the quality of their housing and access to machinery to improve the quality of their farming. We can learn from each other. And I trust and pray, my brother, that this summit will not only be, as our brother Gaston has called for it, and our brother, the president of South Africa has reflected, that it will be an annual summit. But as we go to the very, very, very end of our engagement, let us remember that the only thing that stops us from having a direct air link between Africa and Barbados, Africa and the Caribbean, is the will of those of us who continue not to recognize the importance of unlocking 1.4 billion people who have a common ancestry to be able to work with each other. We thank God that we are, at this point in time, making it together in order to make that defined difference to our people. And it is against that background, I'd like to put on the table, while supporting Gaston's recommendation for an annual summit, to put some other concrete proposals that I believe will make a difference. One, as I said, the establishment of a regular weekly direct airline flight between Africa and CARICOM, even if it means that we may have initially to help subsidize it, because without the vision that is necessary, without the mental emancipation, the unlocking of that 1.4 billion people will not happen. And we cannot justify the AU making CARICOM the 6th diasporic region without seeking now to ensure that the people of both regions can mix with one another and understand why we truly are family. Two, a dedicated and highly empowered public-private sector mechanism that enables the development of the African Caribbean economy, particularly in the areas of digital technology, creative industries, renewable energy, and the life sciences. And separate from that, my dear, all my friends, all of the ability to mobilize our funding in order to be able to ensure that we can finance development, not just of governments, but of companies and individuals in our two regions. Thirdly, the establishment of a joint AU-CARICOM electronic mass media platform, or a mechanism that facilitates the exchange of news, information, and artistic programming, sports. Because when our people see each other on a daily basis, they will understand why we must travel and why we must trade. And they will therefore enable those air links and maritime shipping links that we make to become sustainable. Fourthly, a collective commitment to participate in the 22nd of September high-level meeting in the UN General Assembly week after next, in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the 2001 UN World Conference Against Racism that was held in Durban. And I say so because at that conference, all of the countries of the world, with the exception of a handful of Western countries, agreed that the time had come for us to start to discuss reparations. Since that date, 20 years ago, we've had many things happen, culminating in Black Lives Matter. There is nothing like an idea whose time has come. And I hope that we leave this summit prepared to coordinate a position as we go to the UN to ensure that we now begin to discuss the absence of a development compact when our countries became independent, the extraction of wealth over centuries, and the fact that our future development must rest equally on reparative justice, and if we are to give our people a chance to be able to access the development opportunities that are theirs to have, but have been deprived because of that continuous extraction of wealth over time. As I said earlier, when the UN and major Bretton Woods institutions formed before most of our nations existed, we did not have a chance to be a part of how they were forged and what they focused on. They were simply not created with our existence in mind. As we make up 1/3 of the world's nation states, we must now work together to bring reform to these institutions so that we can unlock the potential to pursue development on behalf of our people. And finally, let us, my brothers and sisters, recognize that in the past, Africans came to the Caribbean because of others, forcibly. Caribbean citizens came to Africa in the early independence years because of the colonial civil service. Let us today, after September 7th, 2021, cut out the middle passage. Let us cut out the middle leg. Let us cut out the middleman. And let us come together and reclaim, each of us, our Atlantic destiny, because it is the best thing for our people. And in claiming the Atlantic destiny, let us forge it in our interests and in our image. As I said earlier, this time, my brothers and sisters, is our time. By choice, our choice, for us and not for anyone else. Thank you, my brother, and I thank the people of Kenya for facilitating this conference. My only regret is that it did not happen in June last year when it was supposed to, and when all of us could have at the end of this hugged each other as brothers and sisters do, knowing that our love and commitment will carry us through. But perhaps the delay of the holding of this conference is the story of our existence. Obstacles upon obstacles, but resilience above resilience to get us to this point. We have started the journey. I pray that others will continue it, for it is absolutely necessary for us, for our people, to do the right thing by them after centuries of exploitation. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you very much, my sister, for that very powerful, powerful statement. And I want to particularly thank you for your passion and how closely we've worked together to make this day a reality, and the passion that you have to bring our people together so that we can together grasp our common destiny and truly, as you have just said, free ourselves from that mental slavery that has kept us apart. So I really look forward to continuing to work with you, and thank you very much for the statement that you have just made. I would like now to give the floor to our dear brother, His Excellency, President Paul Kagame, President of the Republic of Rwanda, and the immediate former chairperson of the East African Community. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, Chairperson of the Summit, Right Honorable Prime Minister Gaston Brownie, Chairperson of the Caribbean Community CARICOM, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellency Dr. Cara Natalie Barnett, Secretary General of CARICOM, leaders of international organizations, distinguished brothers and sisters. Let me begin by congratulating you, my brother, friend, President Uhuru Kenyatta, for spearheading this effort together with the Caribbean leaders. Establishing a permanent forum for dialogue between the African and Caribbean regions is not only welcome, but is also overdue. We are united by ties of history and shared experience. We also confront common challenges, such as trade inequalities, vulnerability to climate change, and the need for more resilient health systems. Our regions also have special requirements for adequate fiscal space to finance pandemic recovery. It is therefore the right moment to deepen the direct ties between our regional organizations and, just as importantly, our peoples. Where we are aligned, we should not hesitate to consult each other and make common cause in multilateral forums. On the horizon, we have COP26 in Scotland in November, and for many of us, the Commonwealth Heads of State and Government meeting in Rwanda in 2022. We are also all members of the new Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, OACPS. The formation of this group, in a sense, really reminded us of the value of bringing our regions closer together for the benefit of our economies and our people. Africa and the Caribbean have a lot to offer one another in the spirit of South-South cooperation, learning from each other's experiences. I look forward to deeper and more frequent interactions in the years ahead by institutionalizing the structures of collaboration between the African Union and the Caribbean community. I thank you for your kind attention and wish all the best to all participants.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, dear brother, for that statement of solidarity. And I'm sure, and I look forward, hopefully, as we move, if we get that opportunity to have our in-person meeting of the Commonwealth soon, that hopefully we would be able, as Prime Minister Mia Mottley said, be able to meet together in your beautiful country of Rwanda and be able to actually exchange even further as we move ahead. I want to now give the floor to His Excellency John Antonio Bresino, Prime Minister of Belize, and the incoming chairperson of CARICOM. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Good morning and good evening for those in the African continent. I am honored to be participating in this first African CARICOM Summit. I wish to thank His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, for his leadership and vision in convening the first Africa-Caricom Summit. Our historic meeting comes at a unique and necessary time in history. Belize welcomes the participation with appreciation this engagement that seeks to advance the Africa-Caricom bi-regional agenda, and it is a demonstration of the firm commitment to increase cooperation and continental integration between Africa and Caribbean under the theme Unity Across Continents and Oceans, Opportunities for Deepening Integration. Caribbean and African ties are deeply rooted and based on a shared history, culture, and sense of a common identity with a common colonial experience that left behind large centers of African diaspora, not only in the Caribbean, but also in the Americas. We have collaborated on and lived the decolonization and equality agendas, a period considered as a very dynamic phase in Africa-Caribbean relations. Now we are obligated to build on the vision and foundation laid by our forebearers, the Marcus Garveys, the Bob Marleys, the Isaiah Mortars of Belize, those who understood the inseparability of the Caribbean and Africa. This summit, Excellencies, is a renewed opportunity to solidify the strong cultural and historical bonds that unite us, not only at governmental level, but also at the people-to-people level. It is imperative that we continue to build on the Africa-Caricom partnership to forge closer, tangible linkages to meet the challenges of today. We already have a strong record of consultations and collaboration with each other in a number of areas within the various configurations and grouping at multilateral organizations, as well as at regional and national levels, including at the United Nations, the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, the Commonwealth, the Non-Aligned Movement, the Group of 77, and the Alliance of Small Island States. While we have worked extensively throughout the post-colonial period to present, there is much more that needs to be done to further strengthen the political dialogue and promote avenues for functional and technical cooperation, increased cultural and educational cooperation, and enhanced trade and economic integration between CARICOM member states and Africa. The unprecedented challenges of today compel us to strengthen cooperation across a range of fora to tackle issues on the global agenda and take coordinated positions and action in areas that matter most, especially Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, climate change, resilience, adaptation, and natural disasters, the global financial system, and issues relating to development financing, de-risking, and blacklisting, migration and trafficking in persons, the equitable and sustainable economic and social recovery from the ongoing COVID-19 crisis, and other common threats. We must not forget the value and dividend to be derived from promoting people-to-people contact, utilizing academic and media channels to foster greater understanding of our shared heritage and exchanges between policymakers in building enduring partnerships. Excellencies, Belize reiterates its commitment to work with sincerity of purpose towards a defined mechanism for our partnership, a structure that will enhance our integration through the elaboration of a plan of action and a program of work, and one that considers the opportunities before us. We must devote sufficient attention to transforming our partnership into a political force for the realization of the full scope of the political and socio-economic dimensions of the African-Caribbean relationship. Belize is deeply appreciative to the African Union for the arrangements put in place that enabled CARICOM member states to access the African Medical Supplies Platform, a very important avenue of COVID-19 vaccine access to support our ongoing vaccine programs. Belize received late last month 132,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccines against COVID-19. Belize is grateful for this expression of solidarity with the region. I also want to acknowledge the generosity of the Kenyan government in facilitating a joint CARICOM physical presence in Nairobi with the objective of expanding the Caribbean's outreach and developing beneficial relations with all our sister nations on the African continent. We hope that one day, in the not too distant future, Belize can join the joint mission and have its first diplomatic presence on the continent. I wish to close by reiterating the commitment of the government and people of Belize to play our part to build a renewed and comprehensive Africa-Caricom partnership that will strengthen the bi-regional links and transform the relationship into a political, social, and economic force. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that statement and the encouraging words of unity that you have expressed. I would now like to give the floor to His Excellency João Manuel Gonzalez Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and the Chairperson of ICGLR. Your Excellency, dear brother, you have the floor.
Sua Excelência Uhuru Kenyatta, Presidente da República do Quênia e Presidente em exercício da Organização dos Países da África, Caribe e Pacífico, Excelências, senhores chefes de Estado e de Governo, minhas senhoras e meus senhores, foi com satisfação que recebi o honroso convite para participar nesta cimeira de concertação político-diplomática entre os países da União Africana e da Comunidade Caribenha, pois considero que devemos fortalecer as relações entre os povos africanos e os do Caribe, com os quais partilhamos um importante legado histórico e laços de consanguinidade resultantes do tráfico transatlântico de seres humanos que está na origem da existência hoje da diáspora africana nas Américas. A contribuição de proeminentes figuras nacionalistas das Ilhas Caribenhas, como o poeta e dramaturgo Aimé Césaire, foi decisiva para a emancipação dos movimentos sindicais e políticos pró-independentistas em África nos anos 50 e 60, bem como para a evolução e afirmação da corrente ideológica e intelectual do pan-africanismo, liderada por figuras como Leopoldo Sédar Senghor, Kwame Nkrumah, Houphouët Boigny, Agostinho Neto, Amílcar Cabral, Sékou Touré e tantos outros estadistas que estiveram na origem da fundação da então Organização da Unidade Africana. Este importante evento realiza-se numa altura em que acabamos de celebrar no passado dia 31 de agosto, o Dia Internacional das Pessoas de Descendência Africana, instituído pelas Nações Unidas em dezembro de 2020. As diligências em curso para a formalização da cooperação entre a União Africana e a CARICOM, mediante um memorando de entendimento, estão conformes com a decisão da União Africana de reconhecer a diáspora africana como a sexta região de África, permitindo-lhe contribuir de forma ativa no desenvolvimento econômico, social e cultural do continente e na vida da nossa organização continental. Excelência, Senhor Presidente, congratulamos-nos com a recente decisão adotada ao nível do Conselho de Segurança das Nações Unidas pela União Africana e a CARICOM de coordenarem esforços para uma melhor defesa dos nossos interesses geopolíticos através da configuração do OA3+1, atualmente coordenado pela República do Quênia. Ficamos gratos pelo apoio prestado pelo OA3+1, a quando da minha deslocação ao Conselho de Segurança das Nações Unidas, a 23 de junho do presente ano, para transmitir a mensagem dos líderes da Conferência Internacional para a região dos Grandes Lagos sobre a necessidade do levantamento do embargo de armas imposto pelo Conselho de Segurança à República Centro-Africana. Excelência, Senhor Presidente, Angola defende a cooperação entre as duas organizações transatlânticas nos domínios do desenvolvimento econômico inclusivo e sustentável, do desenvolvimento humano e social, do meio ambiente, da gestão de recursos naturais e das mudanças climáticas, dos direitos humanos, democracia e boa governação e do combate ao terrorismo e ao crime organizado. As trocas comerciais entre os países da África e da comunidade caribenha são bastante reduzidas, embora exista um imenso potencial na cooperação entre ambas as organizações no domínio da energia, do turismo, da prevenção e proteção do ambiente. Angola está a desenvolver um programa de construção de infraestruturas para responder aos problemas recorrentes da seca e das cheias no sul do país, um problema global que assola não apenas a África, como também as ilhas caribenhas, com os repetidos ciclones, furacões, terremotos e cheias. Uma troca de experiência neste domínio seria mutuamente vantajosa e benéfica para ambas as organizações. Excelência, Senhor Presidente, o reforço da cooperação no domínio do comércio poderá passar por uma interação entre o Secretariado da Zona de Livre Comércio da União Africana, criada com o objetivo de promover as trocas comerciais entre os países africanos e que pode também ser extensiva à Organização dos Países da África, Caraíbas e Pacífico, na base de um possível acordo de livre comércio com os países da comunidade caribenha. Angola acolherá, de 4 a 8 de outubro de 2021, a segunda Bienal de Luanda sobre o Fórum Pan-Africano para a Paz e Cultura, organizada em parceria com a Unesco, constituindo uma excelente plataforma para o estreitamento das relações históricas, culturais e de irmandade entre a União Africana e a comunidade caribenha. Muito obrigado pela vossa atenção.
Thank you very much, dear brother, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Angola, for that encouraging statement. And I now will give the floor to His Excellency, Dr. Lazarus McCarthy Chakwera, President of the Republic of Malawi and Chairperson of SADC. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Your Excellencies, fellow heads of state and government here present, ladies and gentlemen, and all protocols observed. It's an honor to add the voice of Malawi and the entire Southern African Development Community, SADC, to the chorus of solidarity reverberating from the summit to all corners of the globe. Admittedly, our convergence in this fashion is long overdue. Still, as SADC, we hope that this historic moment will be the long-awaited catalyst for building bridges to prosperity for our peoples. Our success in doing so is all but guaranteed because our nations and regions have a kinship so naturally rooted in the rich soils of shared values, histories, cultures, and struggles to make it the best foundation for our cooperation henceforth. Deepening our integration is no longer a luxury, but a necessity whose time has come. Our world is facing numerous challenges, the ravages of poverty, climate change, and COVID-19 being chief among them, exacerbated by inequalities of access to their solutions. Such global crises demand the consolidated perspective of our regions. We need to stand together to ensure solutions to global challenges, protect our people's dignity, and promote our shared interests, such as our desire to see greater economic trade and investment between Africa and the CARICOM member states. By standing together, as we did today, we make it clear that we are neither small nor helpless. SADC alone is a region of over 350 million peoples and 16 states with deepening regional bonds forged from our shared conviction that our strength lies in our numbers and our unity. As a result, we have developed the SADC Vision 2050 as a complementary blueprint to the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union's AU Agenda 2063. We therefore embrace and celebrate this first Africa-Caricom Summit as another milestone towards the creation of a grand coalition of like-minded and like-mannered nations. Beyond embracing and celebrating it, we fully intend to leverage the opportunities for partnership that it avails for the meaningful improvement of the lives of our citizens. Towards that end, we seek to build on already existing engagements between some SADC member states and Caribbean member states to increase investment, collaboration, trade, learning, and exchange between the two regions. By standing together like this, as we move forward, we will make it clear that no challenge before us is insurmountable. And truth be told, for all of us here, standing together like this is not a matter of fashion, but survival. To paraphrase what President Seretse Khama, one of the founders of SADC, said in 1980, we must move together or we perish. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, dear brother, for that statement. And I now will give the floor to His Excellency, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonzalez, Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the chairperson of the CARICOM subcommittee on the ABCD Commission. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, my brother and comrade, the distinguished President of the Republic of Kenya, colleagues, comrades and friends. Given the restrictions of time, I will refrain from delivering my prepared statement. I will circulate it. I want to say that, first of all, 40 years ago, I first went to Africa as a student pursuing doctoral studies. I went to Makerere University in Kampala. Before then and since then, my political life has been engaged in, among other things, the defense and promotion of the African and Caribbean civilizations and their unity. In the 1960s and 70s and into the 80s, many of us participated in support groups for African liberation. In my case, in the United Kingdom, in the USA, and of course, in the Caribbean, for the liberation of Southern Africa, South Africa and Zimbabwe, and for the independence of former Portuguese colonies of Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, Sao Tome, and the Principe. Africa and the Caribbean have over the years, for over 100 years, have been assisting each other in our quest for national liberation and independence. It is very fitting, my dear brother Uhuru, that you should be chairing this historic first summit with Gaston Brown, my friend, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, our CARICOM chair. Because Uhuru, it was your father, the great Jomo Kenyatta, who in 1945 was a central figure at the Pan-Africanist conference in Manchester, at which there were very important Caribbean personalities, some of them referred to by Prime Minister Raoul of Trinidad and Tobago. We recall from the Caribbean the contribution of the heroic and selfless nation of Cuba. This nation shed its blood in the liberation of Southern Africa. The Battle of Cuito Cornwallis is legendary. We all know this history. We all know the selflessness of Cuba. It demands of us today at this summit that we give a practical commitment to assist Cuba, which is currently being besieged by the twin challenges of the illegal blockade, economic blockade by imperialism, and the feverish ravages of COVID-19. Cuba will not ask, but it is our duty to assist and to do so with urgency. A constellation of predisposing and inducing factors have brought us to this historic moment. The factors of history and geography, of ethnicity and culture and global connectedness. The time has come for us to build institutionally a mechanism for the practical realization of the agenda which has been outlined in the concept note to the summit, and as adumbrated by all the preceding speakers. Gaston Brown has advocated a forum, a permanent forum of African and Caribbean states, and I agree with that. At the same time, we ought to establish immediately an Africa-Caricom commission, permanent body, a transitional entity towards a larger, more ambitious Africa, Caribbean, Brazil diaspora commission. Africa has 1.4 billion people. Brazil, 110 million persons are of African descent, half of the population of that country. There are 24 countries washed by the Caribbean Sea, including the member states of CARICOM. Together, these countries number 79, and the population is close to 2 billion. 8 billion people are estimated to be in this world. There are things of a hugely practical nature that we can do to build upon the work we have been doing in a number of different areas, as outlined by several speakers hitherto. And we need to do these things to deepen our integration and our cooperation for the betterment of our people, to uplift the quality of their lives. In the early 20th century, the Right Excellent Marcus Mosiah Garvey, National Hero of Jamaica, founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, made a clarion programmatic call for the unity of Africans at home and abroad. Then, Africa and the Caribbean were in the throes or under the heels of colonialism. Today, there are 54 independent African nations, 24 independent nations in the Association of Caribbean States, all washed by the Caribbean Sea, 14 of which are independent CARICOM states. I mentioned Brazil, and of course, some 70 million persons in the diaspora of persons of African descent. This is a mighty force. The future of humanity rests on the fulcrum of the unity of these countries and peoples. As we elaborate our program, we're mindful of all the bilateral and multilateral work that we have been doing together. And St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been pleased to be part of the A3+1, one being St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this important body at the United Nations Security Council. St. Vincent's tenure on the Security Council comes to an end at the end of this year. It is my regret that there is not another Caribbean country, another CARICOM country going to the Security Council. And we must make this something of great importance as a strategic objective going forward, always to have a country from the Caribbean on the Security Council as a non-permanent member, and to continue to work in that important body and other United Nations bodies as a cohesive and important force. Our agenda in going forward, in addition to all what has been said before, I think we need to take a practical lead very urgently. We have been doing so, but not with the degree of urgency and with the extent of the commitment that we ought to have. That Africa and the Caribbean and our diaspora, in communion with each other, must mount a strong push for reparations, for native genocide, and the enslavement of Africans, which genocide and enslavement were driven by European colonialism. This summit must make a difference. 2 million people are depending upon us. Humanity is depending upon us. So, a transitional institutional arrangement, a permanent Africa-Caricom Commission to evolve into an Africa, Brazil, Caribbean Diaspora Commission. We can only speak here today about the Africa-Caricom Commission, a permanent body within this broad forum, as Gaston Brown has outlined. This vision is something which I believe that all right-thinking people in Africa, the Caribbean, and indeed Latin America and the diaspora would support. I am overjoyed. I feel very privileged. After all the years, to be here at the first Africa-Caricom Summit. The struggle continues. I'm obliged.
Thank you very, very much, dear brother, for that powerful statement, evoking that strong Pan-African spirit that has been there and that we, as another generation, are now trying to recreate. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are now concluded with our second section, where we have heard from all our regional heads and keynote speakers. And I think the message is clear that now, more than ever, the historical and cultural ties of the African peoples across the world cannot be ignored. And really, the onus is upon us as leaders to harness the desire and the will of all peoples of African descent to unite as one across continents and across oceans. Your Excellencies, we do have a few other heads of state who are participating, who have requested to make short statements. And at this juncture, I would like to open the floor to them before we hear from the heads of our regional organizations. So the floor is now open, and We have the President of the Republic of Guyana, and I give the floor over to him.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, Excellency Gladstone Brown, Chair of CARICOM, colleagues, excellencies. I'm honored and pleased to be participating in this dialogue this morning. Africa and the Caribbean are no stranger to each other. As expressed by my colleagues, the bonds that exist between us are based on blood, history, and culture. These ties are strong and enduring. Our regions represent creative and dynamic forces within the international community. As such, there is no reason why we should not initiate greater socioeconomic collaboration. The onus remains on us to forge a path forward based on shared interests and common objectives. Excellencies, this historic meeting occurs on the eve of two critical global events, the UN General Assembly and COP26. It is therefore an opportune time for us to determine some common ideas and messages which we wish to convey to the global community. For us, the global pandemic awakens the harsh reality of the differentiating treatment between the developed and developing world. It also reemphasizes that fundamentally, it is the developing world that suffers the most under these circumstances. I'm therefore of the view that this forced collaboration must address the COVID-19 pandemic and recovery, climate change mitigation and adaptation measures, food security, and costs of commodities and transportation. COVID-19 pandemic and recovery requires from us urgent action. In relation to the pandemic, we must have a forceful message on issues relating to rescheduling of loans, debt financing, access to capital in our rebuilding efforts, and an evaluation of the global vaccination system, along with its failure to respond to the most vulnerable in the world. Climate change is a serious threat, which is exacerbated and further weakens us. Developing countries like Guyana and our sister states in the Caribbean and Africa are facing great difficulties. We have not been historically responsible, but we suffer the greatest and are least equipped to respond. Our countries are bearing the brunt of increasing and more intense climate-related events. We must, therefore, collectively advocate for greater financial flows to help us adapt to the impacts of the climate emergency, including through the establishment of a global vulnerability fund. The largest polluters in developed countries, which have already achieved economic diversification by transferring much of their natural assets into commercial activities, carry a greater responsibility in this respect. Here in Guyana, we remove more carbon dioxide than we emit, something that most countries cannot claim. We therefore believe that we should benefit economically from this service that our forests are providing to the global ecosystem. And to this end, we hope that discussions on the rule book under the Paris Agreement will advance at the upcoming COP26. Guyana's development model is based on its low carbon development strategy. The strategic outcome of the LCDS is to find a pathway to prosperity and development that is non-polluting. The LCDS aims to transform Guyana's economy to better deliver socioeconomic benefits to our people by following a low carbon path, while mainstreaming climate resilience, providing a model to the world of how low carbon, low deforestation, climate resilient development can be possible and beneficial for forested countries. We must also emphasize a compensation system for the blue economy and safeguard the biodiversity. The pandemic has reawakened our vulnerability to food supply, the fragility of our markets, and sensitivity to price changes. It is therefore essential that issues surrounding food security, supply, and availability form an important part of our actionable agenda. Our region suffered immensely from the fallout in the rising costs of commodities and transportation services during the pandemic. We must therefore address these issues through a common theme, as we, the developing economies, will find it even more difficult to cope with and rebuild post-COVID. Having regards for all the above, achieving the SDGs as outlined in Agenda 2030 is severely threatened, and we must all point this out to the global community. Guyana looks forward to a sustained and strengthened relationship between the Caribbean and Africa. We pledge our wholehearted support to ensuring the success of this endeavor. Africa and the Caribbean are no stranger to each other. We are brothers and sisters. Economic integration must be driven by people, technology, policies, and partnership aimed at one objective, the prosperity of all our people. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for that statement. And I now would like to hand over the floor to my dear friend and brother, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Kenyatta, Excellencies, friends, good morning and good afternoon. I'm truly honored to address this historic inaugural Africa-Caricom Summit, a timely dialogue which can only strengthen our fraternal bonds. The common historical experiences between Africa and the Caribbean have been enriched by cultural, economic, and political affinities. Potential untapped for centuries lies within our respective reaches as we not only develop national capacities, but engage opportunities for cooperation with each other and across continents and oceans. The challenges of the last year and a half have reinforced the possibilities and value of the Africa-Caricom relationship. Most critically, Jamaica and the Caribbean region benefited greatly from the African Union's provision of access to COVID-19 vaccines and other critical medical supplies through the innovative AMSP, which has been a game changer for the continent and for us. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is another, creating an enabling environment for the flow of investment and tourism. For Jamaica, there is potential in the agro, industry, and logistics sector. And Jamaican companies have already invested in Africa. Opportunities also exist for scientific research and collaboration, investment in healthcare, technological innovation, and digitization, as well as in the creative economy. In relation to development financing, debt sustainability, and climate change, our cooperation within the OACPS, Commonwealth, UN, and WTO remains a strong foundation for deepening integration between us. We must also use all available platforms for securing meaningful outcomes from COP26. Prior to the pandemic, we were pleased to have the exchange of visits with African leaders, and we had planned for more. Jamaica was also pleased to receive the first non-stop flight from Lagos last December. There are indeed real prospects for exchanges in sports, culture, education, tourism, and the commerce between our regions to improve economic benefits and enhance people-to-people connections. This would narrow the geospatial and psychological separation, reclaim our historical connections, and celebrate ourselves as members of the African diaspora. Colleagues, this summit is the fulfillment of the vision of Garvey, Mandela, Nkrumah, Nyerere, and other Pan-Africanists who spoke of the manifest potential and greatness to be achieved from unified engagement. Let us strive to fulfill their dreams and ours to unleash the full potential of the African continent and the African diaspora in the CARICOM region.
Thank you very much, dear brother, Prime Minister Holness, for that statement. And I now would like to give the floor to our brother, President Emerson Mnangagwa, President of Zimbabwe. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, President of the Republic of Kenya, and the President in office of the Summit of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, and Chairperson of the Summit, Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, heads of state and government, Your Excellencies, I feel honored to be part of this inaugural session of the African Caribbean Community Summit, which is an important dialogue platform for sharing experiences with regards to the realization of the development aspirations of our people. This session comes at a time when the world is grappling with the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as various challenges brought about by climate change. This platform, therefore, entails that Africa and the Caribbean community must continue to strengthen partnerships, cooperation, and coordination towards developing mechanisms to rejuvenate and grow our economies. The need to harness our national and human resources to create opportunities and increase self-reliance for the benefit of our people equally remains critical. With regards to the contemporary realities, we must encourage rigorous debates around responsive strategies to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic and the climate change adaptation, as well as the socioeconomic capabilities that can be harnessed to advance our collective aspirations. This summit also serves as a building block to enhance mutual and comprehensive South-to-South relations mooted under the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. Through this noble initiative, we should redouble engagement efforts with global institutions for the development of inclusive models which will help accelerate the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals by our respective countries. Finally, Your Excellencies, I wish to express Zimbabwe's commitment and support towards the Africa-Caribbean Community Cooperation and other forums which advance our shared aspirations as Africans. I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those words. And I now give the floor to His Excellency, the Honorable Philip Pierre, Prime Minister of St. Lucia. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, Uhuru Kenyatta, colleague heads of state and government, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Secretary General of CARICOM, distinguished guests. While we are separated across land and sea, we have so much in common, including a rich culture and diversity, and our people as a fundamental asset for progress and achievement. I announced on August 1st, 2021, in my inaugural annual Emancipation Day address, 4 days after assuming office, that my administration plans to take Caribbean's real African history to schools and to make Emancipation Day already a holiday, a major annual event on our national calendar. As I said then, we strongly believe that while slavery was abolished over a century ago, the mindset and racial attitudes that brought African people to the Caribbean and the Americas still linger. I assure that this historic first gathering of African Caribbean leaders, that under my watch, St. Lucians will have good reason to remember the struggles of our forefathers, while preserving and protecting the heritage they left us. And today is only the beginning, over 143 years later, but it's never too late to start. My administration also welcomes this ready platform for communication, cooperation, coordination between Africa and the Caribbean to share COVID-19 experiences and develop mechanisms to help reduce our common dependence on equal vaccine distribution. This is a stark living reminder of the inequalities of the system. Having to import 10 times more pharmaceuticals than we produce in the Caribbean, and our regional vaccination levels at only between 15 and 23%. We also support the recent initiative announced by PAO to create a platform to increase regional vaccine manufacturing production. Unfortunately, we also share particularly vulnerability to the ravages of climate change. This means that inevitably, we are all invested in securing sustained global action to arrest and reverse this scourge. In this regard, close cooperation between small and developing states, African countries, and other developing states was instrumental in securing the 2015 Paris Agreement and the 1.5 target for global temperature increase. In light of the climate emergency, the pursuit of a green recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, and the critical decisions to be made at the 26th Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, COP26, is essential that the flame of collaboration kindled in Paris be fanned vigorously in Glasgow in November of this year, in order to ensure that the international community, and in particular industrialized nations, manifest a level of climate ambition that will secure the safety of the planet and the survival of our countries. Our countries must also continue to work under the banner of non-Annex 1 developing countries in the negotiating group of 77 and China. Thus far, we have collaborated and strengthened our voices, having common positions on such fundamental issues as finance adaptation, loss, and damage. In the area of finance, it is imperative that we speak with one voice under the operating entities or the financial mechanism. Division simply retards progress for both our regions, something we can ill afford in a process where we can only move forward with consensus. Our regions must also maximize possibilities for collaboration outside of international arrangements, exploring areas such as technology, capacity building, research exchanges, and formal education opportunities. There is so much that we can learn from each other. Already within the climate change context, the African Union's Agenda 2063 is consonant with CARICOM's agenda as we prioritize environmentally sustainable and climate resilient economies and communities. We are aware that you have committed to act with a sense of urgency on climate change and the environment, to focus on climate technology, women and youth, sustainable forest management, and climate resilient agriculture, among others. As we forge ahead, the Caribbean community looks forward to deeper and more meaningful connections with the continent of Africa, working together in achieving the developmental aspirations of our nations and our people. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And I now give the floor to His Excellency, the Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit, Prime Minister of Dominica. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I want to thank you and to recognize heads of state and government colleagues, friends all. I want to associate myself with all of the exceptional recommendations that have been made in forging ahead our close collaboration and contact. This is an opportunity we've been yearning for a very long time. And I'm very happy to be part of this occasion where we can join hands with our brothers and sisters in Africa. There are common challenges which we have to work on, and these common challenges, it is for us to find common solutions to those challenges. And so the structure which has been proposed by my chairman, Comrade Gaston Brown, in formalizing this relationship, I believe it is something that we need to move with a matter of urgency. I want to recognize the leadership of His Excellency, the President of Kenya, and also my colleague, friend, Mia Motley, for advancing this opportunity for us to be able to meet together. Dominica stands ready to play its part in a meaningful and tangible way in advancing this effort of greater collaboration between our nations. And I can say to you, Excellency, that here in the Caribbean, there is great excitement and anticipation for stronger ties, stronger collaboration, and increased contact between our peoples and among our peoples. So I really want to place on record my full support for this inaugural summit, and to urge that we move with speed. We've put in the infrastructure in place to allow this to be an annual event, not only of heads of government and heads of state, but for there to be this contact among our people, that our African brothers and sisters can visit us in the Caribbean, and of course we from the Caribbean can reciprocate that particular action. So I pray, God, that we will be successful in our efforts, because our people are looking for us to provide that leadership. Our people are looking for us to advance this collaborative effort, because they are convinced that we must find common solutions to our common challenges. We cannot look to others to do it. We have to do it for ourselves and by ourselves. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And I now give the floor to His Excellency, Dr. Philip Mpango, Vice President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Vice President, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to begin by commending our host and dear brother, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, the President of the Republic of Kenya, for conceptualizing and crystallizing the idea of having this important Africa-Caricom summit. Allow me also to convey sincere apologies from Her Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, who wished to be part of this historic event, but due to other equally important national commitments, she had to delegate the tasks to me, and I feel honored for the opportunity. Excellencies, the drive to promote stronger ties between Africa and CARICOM is underpinned by the fact that we share a common descent and desire to achieve faster, sustainable development and prosperity for our people, as well as respectable voice in shaping the conduct of global affairs for the benefit of all mankind. Since the reign of Tanzania's founding president, Julius Nyerere, South-South cooperation has remained a key tenet of our foreign policy. And examples of this stance include the hosting of the then Liberation Committee of the OAU and championing of trade and regional integration initiatives in the East African Community and SADC regions. This stemmed from a recognition that South-South cooperation is a means and a great opportunity for us, not only to promote political solidarity, but also to marshal collective action against a common challenge or enemy. While we note the huge potential of cooperation between African CARICOM, we wish to underscore the importance of ensuring the unity of purpose. Tanzania's view is that we need first to agree to zero in on moving South-South cooperation to the next frontier, targeting to harness the blue economy resources which we all share, scale up inter and intra-Africa CARICOM trade and investment, preferential market access, and how we can together benefit from technological advancement. Secondly, this forum ought to be an instrument to sharpen and bolster our voice in global negotiations on monetary, financial, trade, and environmental agenda, which have a huge bearing on our economic growth, development, and survival. In this regard, Tanzania fully supports the proposal to make the Africa-Caricom Summit a standing annual event. We also underscore the importance of setting ourselves clear goals in relation to our immediate development priorities and to improving the management of global affairs. Excellencies, finally, this meeting is taking place at a time when we are all still faced with a devastating health and economic crisis. Despite the global nature of COVID-19 pandemic, the response to the crisis has seen countries in the South being severely affected, first owing to their relatively smaller capacity to respond, and secondly, by the vaccine nationalism witnessed in the developed world. It is therefore prudent and upon us, Africa and the Caribbean, to unite in our response and to amplify efforts for vaccines to be made available to those most in need in developing countries. Excellencies, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice President, for that statement. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we now move to listen to the heads of our various organizations, and I would like to now give the floor to His Excellency Musa Faki Mahamat, the Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Excellence, Monsieur Uhuru Kenyatta, Président de la République du Kenya, hôte du sommet. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et du gouvernement d'Afrique et des Caraïbes, chers collègues secrétaires généraux des CARICOM et des États ACP, distingués participants, les circonstances historiques douloureuses vécues par le continent africain ont arraché des millions d'Africains à leur terre natale et à leurs racines. Victimes d'horribles déportations aux fins d'esclavage 4 siècles durant, ces Africains ont peuplé plusieurs contrées dont les îles Caraïbes, contribuant ainsi à l'essor et à la prospérité de certaines, au prix de la sueur, du sang et d'atrocités diverses. De telles plaies gravées dans la conscience universelle sont ineffaçables. C'est à juste titre que les Nations Unies ont décidé de consacrer le 31 août, Journée internationale des personnes d'ascendance africaine. Cette reconnaissance mondiale est un pas important dans la reconnaissance du martyre subi par ces personnes, mais aussi contre le racisme, l'exclusion et les inégalités. Malgré les siècles les distances et l'ampleur des tragédies et des horreurs subies, les Africains déportés et réduits à la servilité ont conservé des traditions, des cultures, des rites et croyances, un esprit et surtout une âme dans la pierre, l'homme noir de là-bas. De génération en génération, ils ont préservé ces fils qui les relient à leur continent d'origine et que la longue histoire de l'esclavage et de l'acculturation n'a pas réussi à ternir ou briser. C'est ce fil que nous voulons transformer en un pont de la renaissance de notre destin commun. Je voudrais à ce stade rendre un vibrant hommage à son Excellence Uhuru Kenyatta, qui est à l'origine de tout le processus qui nous offre aujourd'hui l'occasion de tenir ces premiers sommets Afrique-Caraïbes. Je voudrais également saluer la présence massive à ce sommet virtuel des dirigeants de deux régions réunis dans un si bel élan de retrouvailles et d'ambition exaltée. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, l'évolution historique et politique de l'Afrique et des Caraïbes, marquée par la domination coloniale, la ségrégation raciale, les luttes pour l'indépendance et la difficile construction des États, n'a pas permis aux deux ensembles de conjuguer leurs efforts à la mesure de leurs aspirations à la liberté et à la dignité longtemps bafouées. Le moment est donc venu de corriger nos trajectoires, de concrétiser notre ambition commune et de faire un front commun contre les adversités que sont l'exclusion, le racisme et le sous-développement. Les possibilités qu'offrent les moyens de communication modernes facilitent énormément ces rapprochements. Sachons-y mettre la même volonté politique de part et d'autre de l'océan. Une surabondance d'opportunités politiques, culturelles, sportives, économiques et commerciales offre largement ses bras à nous. Les Caraïbes, c'est plus de 700 îles d'une superficie d'un peu plus d'1 million de kilomètres carrés, pour une population totale de 44 millions, dotée d'un énorme potentiel économique et marin. En face, il y a l'Afrique, avec ses 30 millions de kilomètres carrés, son 1,2 milliard d'habitants, un immense réservoir de matières premières inégalé sur la planète. L'histoire commune et les affinités culturelles devraient faciliter les apports mutuels où chacun apporte à l'autre de vrais trésors de toute nature. Ouvrir de nouveaux horizons à une telle ambition, voilà ce auquel notre rencontre d'aujourd'hui doit se consacrer. Les textes fondateurs de l'Union africaine jettent les bases politiques et juridiques de ces désirs ardents. C'est ainsi qu'elle indique clairement, comme un des objectifs fixés dans sa charte constitutive, et je cite, la participation effective des Africains de la diaspora à la construction de l'Union africaine. La considération de la diaspora comme la 6e région de l'Union africaine traduit avec éloquence cette philosophie. Aujourd'hui, constituons le même groupe au Conseil de sécurité des Nations unies. De A3, c'est-à-dire les États africains membres non permanents, plus Saint-Vincent. C'est une marque de solidarité active et effective. L'Union africaine et la communauté des États caribéens signeront bientôt un mémorandum d'entente sur le renforcement des liens avec les peuples d'ascendance d'Afrique. Cet événement sera l'aboutissement des échanges entre l'Union africaine, la communauté des îles Caraïbes et le réseau panafricain des Caraïbes qui ont eu lieu à Trinidad et Tobago au mois d'août 2017. De même, l'Union africaine s'attelle à documenter les contributions des peuples africains à travers le monde à l'histoire de l'Afrique et à la culture africaine. Dans cette perspective, nous serions heureux d'associer nos frères africains des autres continents, et ceux des Caraïbes en particulier, aux manifestations qui marqueront l'année 2021 consacrée aux arts, à la culture et au patrimoine levier d'édification de l'Afrique. Puissent ces sommets contribuer au développement des peuples d'Afrique par-delà les différences forgées par l'histoire et la distance. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and let me say that your words and statement are very reassuring to us. As we move forward the process that we have started today, and I believe that that process is in very good hands, as we all work together to put in place the structures that will strengthen this African-Caribbean partnership that we have initiated today. I also wish to thank you, Chair, for the crucial role you and the Commission have played since we initiated the process of having this summit, and to say that we are truly grateful for the role that you and your staff at Addis Ababa have done to bring us this far. I now wish to give the floor to Dr. Carla Natalie Barnett, Secretary General of CARICOM, to make her remarks.
Good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Your Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, other excellencies, heads of state and government, other heads of regional institutions in CARICOM and in Africa, ladies and gentlemen. The cycle of history has brought us together again. Centuries after enforced separation, we gather around this virtual table to foster a new relationship between our regions, one that is freely entered into. We have had our moments of acting together to protect and advance our mutual interests, but today we are committing to forge a new and more permanent alliance that has the potential to open new vistas of collaboration and cooperation. Key to our future relationship is the strengthening of institutional links. Over the years, we at the CARICOM Secretariat have had the pleasure of interacting with the Secretariats of Integration Movements in Africa, representatives of the African Union Commission, the Southern African Development Community, and the Economic Community of West African States have all been welcomed to our Guyana headquarters. There have been reciprocal visits to the Southern African Development Community. These exchanges began in 1997, have continued periodically, and are aimed at exploring and exchanging ideas on the processes of regional cooperation and the systems and procedures of operations. Countries of the Caribbean community and Africa have always been at the forefront of initiatives aimed at developing countries working closer together. We were both at the heart of the conception and formation of the non-aligned movement, and similarly, what is now the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. What we have not done is use those links to create lasting mechanisms which would bring together the strengths of our two regions to elicit results to the benefit of our countries and our peoples. The recent experiences with respect to the acquisition and distribution of vaccines to stop the spread of a global pandemic must serve as an impetus to drive this relationship forward. I take this opportunity to thank the African Union for its generosity and solidarity in including the Caribbean community in the African Medical Supplies Platform, which has provided significant amounts of vaccines to our member states. The imperatives that we both face more starkly than others with the phenomenon of climate change must also drive us towards ever closer unity of purpose and action. The sharing of skills and information between our scientific communities and our institutions established to combat this existential threat should be encouraged. Indeed, in 2018, at the high-level discussions between the CARICOM Secretariat and the African Union Commission, both sides agreed on the need for greater collaboration on matters of mutual interest in the international arena, such as climate change. The recent scientific reports spell out dire predictions for both our regions, given the continuing rise in global warming as it approaches 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels at a rate much faster than previously acknowledged. That matter of mutual interest is one that must unite us at the COP26 in the United Kingdom later this year. Chair, this new relationship must also extend to increasing trade and investment between Africa and CARICOM. Preliminary figures for 2020 indicate total trade at approximately 29 million US, a drop of 10 million from 2018. While the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic can explain this, as we seek to rebuild our economies, the private sector on both sides must become alive to the opportunities to expand investment and trade in both regions with the requisite policy support from the public sector. It is one of the areas in which our mutual membership in organizations, such as the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, can be leveraged to our benefit. Let us demonstrate that South-South cooperation can be an instrument that leads to furthering the development of nations. Let the evils of the past that separated us be turned into the good fortunes of our future. Let the potential of this relationship be realized into the reality of a better life for the peoples of the Caribbean community and of Africa. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Barnett, for your statement. And indeed, I see a very bright and fruitful future for African and Caribbean partnership from your statement. And I also would like to thank you for your contribution, together with that of the chairperson of the African Union, towards making this day a reality. And I take this opportunity to also wish you every success as you execute your new duties. Thank you very much. I would now like to give the floor to the Special Envoy for the African Union on COVID-19, Mr. Strife Masiwa, who played a very critical role in developing the medical supplies platform that we are now currently sharing together. Strife, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this opportunity to address this unique and important summit. Your Excellency, I will be brief. You asked me a few months ago to direct our energy towards our partnership with the CARICOM countries. And my mission is simply to give you a quick update on where we are with respect to delivery of vaccines. As you will recall, the Bureau of African Presidents in August last year directed that 60% should be the African target for vaccinations. That is approximately 780 million African people. You also directed that that should include the Caribbean member states. So we rounded off as a target of 800 million people. Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa created the Africa Vaccine Acquisition Task Team, which is made up of 10 leaders whose task is to negotiate for the acquisition of vaccines, which he graciously chairs. I am simply the coordinator. Our work began in November last year, and it became immediately apparent that we would, even with all the money, it would not be possible to buy vaccines because they had already been hoarded by the major countries. I shall not go into this issue except to point out that it became extremely difficult. And therefore, it was necessary that the African countries work together towards the purchase of vaccines. And President Ramaphosa led the process of engaging with the suppliers. The difficulty was compounded by the fact that all the suppliers wanted to be paid upfront. Your Excellencies, we had therefore to put together a vaccine financing facility of $3 billion, primarily supported by member states through the Afri-Exim Bank. And as a consequence of that, we were able to then engage to purchase at least 50% of our vaccine requirement on the expectation that the donor community would come with the other 50%. The way we addressed the problem of supply was to focus on a vaccine being produced through a major South African company, which was able to repurpose itself to manufacture on behalf of the member states a product from the American company Johnson & Johnson. This vaccine was chosen for 3 reasons. One, of course, because we could get it produced in Africa. Secondly, it was the cheapest, and it was a single-shot vaccine. So we entered into a contract with this company to purchase 400 million doses in March for supply to begin in August. The 400 million doses will be delivered over a 12-month period, beginning August. And as many of you know, 41 African countries have so far signed up to purchase vaccines through the platform. We've also organized a partnership with the World Bank, which was brokered by our chairman, President Ramaphosa, who met with the World Bank, who then agreed to avail to the member states up to $4 billion to purchase vaccines through the platform. So we've got 41 countries. Last month, we started to make shipments. We met with the CARICOM member states, and 6 of them have ordered 3 million vaccines. We started shipments to them last month. We expect to complete that entire shipment of 3 million vaccines by the end of October. We are available to receive more orders from the Caribbean countries, and we ship to them on an expedited basis, even though we take longer to ship to all the African member states. And Your Excellency, we've had a fantastic working relationship. I hope that this is an example of what you as leaders are gathered here to see happen, that we can work together to face a major challenge. We are very pleased that we're not only supplying them with vaccines, we're able to supply them with oxygen, with PPE, with anything that they require that required a pooled purchasing arrangement. Allow me again to express our deepest gratitude to the member states who are shareholders of Afri-Exim Bank, because it was their effort in recapitalizing the bank to make it possible for the advance payments to be done. These are countries like Nigeria, Egypt, Zimbabwe, and many others who met and provided the funding support for the bank so we could do the advance payment. But we are very pleased with the progress with the member states. We urge those member states who either have not placed orders or wish to place more orders. Because again, as a result of a major intervention by President Ramaphosa with the Europeans last month, we're now in a position to ship 20 million doses a month. The Aspen facility which intends to expand to other African countries, will be shipping as many as 40 million doses a month by the end of January. Still, this is getting all the 400 million shipped is still only half of our requirement. But at least this is the only guaranteed supply of vaccines. The donation vaccines, which were supposed to be 750 by December, we have so far received less than 50 million of that target, which means we were clearly not able to depend on donations from the rich nations. So we urge you to support us through this platform. We are ready to ensure that any Caribbean country that wishes to get vaccines, we will deliver to them hopefully before Christmas so that we can all visit the islands, as I have done on many, many occasions, including to watch the Cricket World Cup. So I thank you for your attention, and I hope that we will continue in this cooperation in many, many other areas, as we have shown on this occasion.
Thank you very much, Strife, and once again, congratulations for everything that you are doing, and please just keep doing it. I'd now like to give the floor to His Excellency Dr. George Pinto Chikoti, who is the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States. Your Excellency, you have the floor. We seem to have lost him. Let's see if we can get him back on while we listen to Dr. Jean Leon, President of the Caribbean Development Bank. You have the floor.
Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, Excellencies, heads of state, and other leaders of the African Union and CARICOM, let me begin by thanking you for organizing this groundbreaking summit. Aptly, this summit precedes the International Day for South-South Cooperation on September 12th, whose formal concept emerged over a half-century ago. Importantly, real cooperation between Africa and the Caribbean goes back centuries, with a relationship forged in our shared history and culture and our sense of a common identity. Today, I will limit my remarks to two areas of mutual concern to our regions, that is, debt sustainability and climate change, and the role of institutions like the Caribbean Development Bank in crafting innovative approaches to financing development. First, debt sustainability has been a big concern, with African Union and CARICOM countries being counted amongst the world's most highly indebted nations. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted our structural weaknesses and amplified the debt problem. In 2020, public debt reached 70% of GDP in Africa and 83% of GDP in CARICOM. Our regions face the unusual conundrum of striving for debt sustainability while seeking to generate adequate fiscal resources to build resilience. But even as we contemplate such recovery, our development prospects are further buffeted by climate change. We are among the most vulnerable countries to the impacts of climate change. We are less able to resist, adapt to, and recover from the effects of sea level rise, prolonged droughts, and extreme weather conditions. Natural hazard events have repeatedly resulted in adverse environmental, social, and economic consequences. Projections also suggest that our two regions will face more exaggerated climate risks for the remainder of the century. This poses a serious threat to our attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. There is merit, therefore, in developing joint approaches to the debt and climate change challenges we face. Indeed, working together, our regional development banks are well placed to engineer innovative financing approaches and to advocate for access to lower cost of finance based on an imperative for development that distinguishes pre-event vulnerability, magnitude of event impact, and post-event persistence and duration of impact. These effects, evidenced by our repeated natural hazard events, and indeed the COVID-19 pandemic, present strong arguments against the inadequacy of per capita income as a measure of classification and access to concessional finance. CDB fully endorses the institutionalization of CARICOM Africa Union relations. I urge that we go further by establishing trade and cooperation agreements, which would significantly expand the markets for goods and services, facilitate export diversification, and create the right environment for innovation and technological transfer. Africa is a fountain of knowledge on innovative financing for the private sector, especially youth entrepreneurship. We in the Caribbean can learn from Boost Africa, the joint initiative between the African Development Bank and the European Investment Bank that offers an innovative way to de-risk private investment. Further, we cannot achieve climate resilience without protecting terrestrial and marine ecosystems. Such actions will provide essential services that sustain livelihoods by providing food and clean water and reducing soil erosion and flooding. We can also share experiences and practices on valuing, using, and benefiting from our natural resources while protecting them for future generations. Jointly, we should support and advocate for increased concessional finance for investments in nature-protecting solutions. In conclusion, let me underscore CDB's commitment to enhanced cooperation in knowledge and financing solutions with our partners in Africa. This summit offers an ideal opportunity to harness our combined and untapped potential and to begin to look forward to the meaningful transformation of our two regions. I thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leon. We will now hear from His Excellency Patrick Rajolina, Foreign Minister of the Republic of Madagascar. Foreign Minister, you have the floor.
Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République du Kenya et Président de la Communauté de l'Afrique de l'Est, Excellence, Monsieur le Président de l'Union africaine, Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la CARICOM, Excellence, les membres du bureau de l'Assemblée de l'Union africaine, Excellence, les présidents des communautés économiques régionales, Excellence, les présidents des institutions de l'Union africaine, Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la Commission de l'Union africaine, Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs. Tout d'abord, permettez-moi de présenter les excuses de son Excellence, Monsieur André Nirin Rajoelina, président de la République de Madagascar et président en exercice du COMESA, pour son impossibilité de participer aujourd'hui à cette réunion. En effet, il a eu des événements, il n'a pas pu se libérer de ses engagements antérieurs. Excusez-moi. J'aimerais également transmettre ici les salutations des 21 États membres de notre organisation que Madagascar a eu l'honneur de diriger au cours de ces 4 dernières années. Je voudrais aussi remercier le président Uhuru Kenyatta d'avoir accueilli cette importante réunion malgré les défis occasionnés par la pandémie du Covid-19. Mes remerciements également à l'endroit des dirigeants de l'Union africaine et de la CARICOM pour avoir organisé ce tout premier sommet Afrique-Caricom. Cela restera à jamais une réalisation marquante dans l'histoire de l'intégration de nos deux régions qui partagent bien des points communs dans les domaines économiques, politiques, sociaux et culturels. Cette rencontre se tient à un moment crucial pour nos deux régions qui ont besoin d'une plus grande solidarité afin de relever les défis mondiaux émergents. Les expériences de la pandémie Covid-19 nous ont appris de précieuses leçons. Nous devons changer d'orientation, consacrer nos efforts vers la pleine exploitation de nos propres ressources et surtout intégrer nos économies pour relever collectivement les défis émergents. C'est la raison pour laquelle la détermination et les progrès accomplis vers l'intégration continentale africaine sont louables. Le COMESA demeure attaché à cette noble ambition qui consiste à soutenir l'intégration de l'Afrique et a fortiori celle de la CARICOM et des régions similaires comme le Pacifique avec lesquelles nous partageons des défis et des aspirations communs. Le renforcement progressif du processus d'intégration partant de la zone préférentielle en 1982, la mise en place de la zone de libre-échange en 2000 et le lancement de l'union douanière en 2009 témoignent de l'engagement de nos États membres à accroître les opportunités d'échange et d'investissement, la création d'emplois et l'amélioration des conditions de vie de nos peuples grâce à l'intégration. Le COMESA continue de mettre en œuvre des progrès clés pour favoriser l'intégration économique à travers divers piliers, à savoir l'intégration du marché, l'intégration productive, l'intégration physique et l'intégration sociale. La transformation numérique de nos instruments d'intégration se trouve au cœur de nos stratégies. Pour compléter ces initiatives, un certain nombre d'institutions spécialisées ont également été créées au sein du COMESA en vue de soutenir la mise en œuvre efficace du programme d'intégration. Il s'agit notamment de la Banque de commerce et de développement, la compagnie de réassurance, l'Agence pour l'assurance du commerce en Afrique et la Chambre de compensation du COMESA qui permettent de faciliter les investissements, la production et le commerce transfrontalier. Les autres institutions clés incluent l'Agence d'investissement régional basée en Égypte et l'Institut africain du cuir en Éthiopie. Le COMESA a élaboré une stratégie individuelle qui se concentre sur 9 domaines prioritaires. L'agroalimentaire, l'énergie, le textile et l'habillement, le cuir et les produits en cuir, la valorisation des produits minéraux, les produits pharmaceutiques, les produits chimiques et agrochimiques, l'ingénierie légère et l'économie verte. La promotion des chaînes de valeur régionales dans les secteurs clés est l'approche privilégiée. Cela devrait permettre une augmentation des activités à valeur ajoutée en pourcentage du PIB, une augmentation d'au moins 20% d'ici à 2025 par rapport à l'estimation annuelle de 9%. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, en ce qui concerne l'intégration des infrastructures, le COMESA cherche à renforcer leur interconnexion en collaborant avec la Commission de l'Union africaine, l'ODA-NEPAD, et les communautés économiques régionales sœurs, membres de la tripartite COMESA, EAC, SADC, à travers le programme PIDA. Les priorités dans ce domaine sont orientées vers le développement de corridors de transport multimodal, incluant le programme de navigation entre le lac Victoria et la mer Méditerranée. l'interconnexion de la production d'électricité et le développement de corridors TIC. Concernant la dimension sociale de l'intégration à travers les dispositions de la charte sociale, le COMESA s'est focalisé sur l'élaboration de programmes phares tels que le projet 50 millions de femmes africaines ont la parole, le fonds de l'automatisation économique des femmes, la proposition de cours en ligne et l'élaboration de programmes de formation du COMESA sur le commerce et sur le genre. L'intégration environnementale dans les secteurs productifs se manifeste dans les mécanismes d'adaptation et d'atténuation des effets du changement climatique. Excellences, Mesdames, Messieurs, je vous remercie de votre attention et je poursuivrai pour dire la coopération entre l'Afrique et la CARICOM apporterait plusieurs avantages à nos économies. Elle présente une belle opportunité de développer un marché élargi pour nos produits et donc de favoriser le commerce et les investissements dans les deux régions. Cela nous permettra automatiquement de surmonter le défi des petits marchés fragmentés auxquels nous sommes actuellement confrontés. En outre, cela offre des opportunités qui permettent de renforcer les chaînes de valeur régionales, stimulant ainsi l'industrialisation et la transformation structurelle indispensables dans nos régions. La différenciation des produits, suite à l'élargissement des marchés, permet d'augmenter la compétitivité et l'efficacité de la production et les consommateurs bénéficient directement des réductions de prix sur le marché et les choix de produits. Enfin, il est important de recentrer nos énergies vers un nouveau changement de paradigme pour relever les défis émergents, en particulier la pandémie de Covid-19, les défis associés à la 4e révolution industrielle et le chômage des jeunes dans nos deux régions. J'estime que les efforts et les engagements collectifs en tant que peuple s'avèrent nécessaires pour relever efficacement ces défis. Plus que jamais, l'intégration régionale s'avère essentielle à la réalisation réussie de nos aspirations à une croissance et un développement durable et inclusif. Marchons et travaillons ensemble dans un esprit de solidarité et de partenariat. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister. Well, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, because of the constraints of time, we will now hear from our last speaker, and that is the Secretary General of the Organization of African, Caribbean, and Pacific States, Dr. Chikoti. You now have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Your Excellency, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya and current President of the OACPS Summit, the Honorable Gaston Brown, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda and Chair of the Caribbean Community, Excellencies, African and Caribbean Heads of State and Government in attendance, Your Excellency, the African Union Commission President, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to congratulate His Excellency Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya and current President of the OACPS Summit, for having convened this historic summit, which brings together members of 2 of the 3 main regions of the African and Caribbean Pacific states. Excellencies, today, no country is secure if all countries are not secure. It is only when we act together and in unison that we will achieve our goals, including the sustainable and inclusive development of our countries and peoples. Together, we are stronger. Our unity is the vector to attain the Sustainable Development Goals and implement the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. Our historical linkages and the increasing importance of the diaspora in the development of our countries are at the heart of this summit. We are committed to promoting and facilitating together integration and deeper relations among the regions of the African, Caribbean, and Pacific states. Mr. President, this summit is testimony to your commitment to our regions, the OACPS and the wider global community to make tangible contribution to a better, fairer, and more equitable world. As they seek to become part of the global economy, our countries face several obstacles, particularly their size in economic terms, structural weaknesses, the insufficient diversification of their economies, and poor integration with respect to physical infrastructure, to name but a few. In this context, regional and transcontinental integration and cooperation make it possible to overcome these challenges by increasing the competitiveness of our economies through economics of scale, improved access to technology, sharing knowledge and good practices, and pooling of resources. We must work together to create enabling conditions for including everyone, especially women and young people, in our sustainable development and global economic inclusion strategies. Today, let me pay special tribute to the AU and CARICOM for the progress they have made in deepening regional integration, respectively through the African Continental Trade Area and the Caribbean Single Market and Economy. Coming together at this summit to formalize their relationship is a commitment to further enhance the linkages among both peoples and jointly address challenges and opportunities. I am convinced that South and Triangular Cooperation, consistent with the OACPS vision of creating a free trade area encompassing the African, Caribbean, and Pacific regions, would bring advantages to citizens of these regions. Excellencies, the COVID-19 pandemic has unfortunately reminded us that we are living at a time marked by fundamental changes and often unpredictable challenges. Their complexities and scope are severely testing our ability to both anticipate and respond adequately. Multilateralism is the appropriate, if not the only framework for effectively meeting global challenges, such as threats to peace and security, the fight against terrorism, violent extremism, organized crime, pandemics, and the ongoing crisis of climate change and biodiversity loss. The OACPS is committed to strengthening and promoting multilateralism to enhance the influence of its members on the international scene and defend their interests while respecting the principles of subsidiarity, complementarity, proportionality, and value addition. Your Excellencies, the Constituent Act of the OACPS Georgetown Agreement, as revised in 2019, reaffirmed our unity in diversity and solidarity as cornerstones of our organization. As an international organization, we cannot overstate the importance of regional cooperation. To this end, the full operationalization of the provisions of the Georgetown Agreement, and in particular the OACPS Interregional Organizations Coordination Committee, would ensure greater collaboration and coordination among the various regional organizations of the OACPS. The new OACPS EU Partnership Agreement, which includes 3 action-oriented regional protocols, compels us to strengthen and expand our interregional relationships. In conclusion, the OACPS is committed to support the African Union CARICOM relationship and contribute towards enhanced unity across continents and oceans. I thank you, Your Excellencies.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for those comments. So, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we now come to the close of what I believe has been a very successful summit, I want to really just take this opportunity just to thank each and every one of you for the insightful comments and very captivating proposals on how we can move forward together. Before I try and wrap up, I'd like to invite our Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Dr. Rachel Omamo, or Ambassador Rachel Omamo, to present the highlights of the key outcomes of today's summit. Ambassador Omamo, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency President Kenyatta, Your Excellency Heads of State and colleague ministers. It is my distinct privilege to highlight key elements of the draft communiqué that will be issued after we close this meeting. It will be circulated to all of you for your approval, but we thought it was important for you to note some of the key components of it to ensure that we were able to capture the spirit and the power of this important summit. The communiqué will start by noting that heads of state and governments of member states of the African Union and the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, met virtually for the inaugural Africa-Caricom Summit, hosted by His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, on the 7th of September 2021, under the theme, Unity Across Continents and Oceans, Opportunities for Deepening Integration. The objective of this historical summit was to reaffirm the bonds of ancestry and friendship between Africa and CARICOM, and to build a foundation for lasting engagements and partnerships between the two regions for a collective future. Key components of the communiqué are as follows. The inaugural session of the summit recalled, first, the declaration of the 33rd session of the African Union Summit held in February 2020 on promoting closer collaboration and cooperation between the AU, the African diaspora, and the people of African descent in the Caribbean and Pacific regions, and the recognition of the CARICOM Summit of February 2020 on the need to increase contact between its members and African countries. Secondly, expressed its concern regarding the rapid mutation and spread of COVID-19 and the impact that it has had on our societies and our health infrastructure. It was noted that countries of Africa and the Caribbean had faced enormous challenges in mitigating the impact of the pandemic. The summit therefore called for increased access to vaccines. It called also for the production of vaccines in continent and within the Caribbean, and for the waiver of key elements of the TRIPS agreement to ensure greater access to vaccines. Under this heading, appreciation was noted with regard to the Africa Medical Supply Platform and the work of the task force headed by His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa was greatly appreciated. The summit also noted the devastating economic effects that COVID-19 was having on our societies. It was noted that even though the G20 debt service suspension initiative was welcome and that progress had been achieved in facilitating higher pandemic-related spending, there was still a need for enhanced debt relief measures and for financial access and for innovative approaches to debt sustainability and fiscal access to enable countries in our regions to refocus on achieving sustainable development goals and the goals of the Paris Agreement. 4, the summit reiterated its commitment to achieve sustainable development in member states severely affected by environmental challenges arising from climate change and affirmed their commitment to ensure the realization of SDG 14 to conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and maritime resources for sustainable development, and to pursue efforts to limit temperature increase to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, as is called for under the Paris Agreement. There was also a reaffirmation of the commitment to multilateralism, but also the summit urged for the need to strengthen and reform multilateral institutions to ensure inclusion and better representation from countries from our region, and also to press for reparative justice and to call for the lifting of punitive and unilateral sanctions and embargoes against Cuba and Zimbabwe. 6, the summit noted the need to address mutual economic and communication challenges within the spirit of South-South cooperation, and in particularly to collectively endeavor to exploit the blue economy and technology for the advancement of our peoples. 7th, the summit underscored the need to foster increased trade, investment, air travel, maritime shipping links, with a view to greater economic integration between our two regions, and to foster and design specific agreements and frameworks to further trade. It was noted that opportunities lay in the Africa Continental Free Trade Area in this regard. In addition, the summit urged heads of state and government to provide the political goodwill and affirmation of activities aimed at fostering closer cultural, educational, scientific, and sports relationships between our people in order to increase people-to-people engagement through the AU and Africa by using mass media platforms wherever necessary. Finally, the summit expressed the need to institutionalize cooperation between Africa and CARICOM and other parts of our diaspora by setting up a dedicated secretariat or structure and holding annual summits of the Africa-Caricom for Africa and the CARICOM on the 7th of September every year, and called on member states to support this initiative. These are the key highlights. We will improve the text and circulate it to the participants in early course. I thank you for your kind attention. Oh, actually, one last. No, I think I've done it all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Omamo, for that summary. And indeed, as she has noted, we will be circulating the conclusions of this summit to all participants so that we can refine and have a very clear communique on the decisions that we have taken at this historic event. Allow me now, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, to make a short closing statement as we wind up this very first Africa-Caricom Summit. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, Your Excellencies, heads of regional organizations, ladies and gentlemen, heads of delegations, we have now come to the end of a very successful first Africa-Caricom Summit. And this summit has laid a firm foundation on which to build strong political, cultural, and social economic cooperation for all people of African descent. This summit has provided a platform to envision a future anchored on shared prosperity for our two regions. And in this context, we have had a rich, productive discussion on the key pillars of this shared vision. The first is our aspiration for a much deeper political cooperation and collaboration between the African Union and the Caribbean community, building on our shared heritage. The second is to manage the risks and threats that confront us. In particular, the management of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, climate change, and debt sustainability, all of which require a multinational approach. We agreed to work together across our two regions to define our priorities and ensure that the global response is aligned to our unique challenges. These risks, I believe, also present us with opportunities to collectively think out of the box and recognize, as well as seize the opportunities presented by these crises. The third is the promotion and expansion of trade and investment, with a focus on new frontiers such as technology, and in particular fintech and our blue economy, to catalyze fast recovery and growth of our respective economies. We recognize our strength in numbers, especially if we all commit to eliminating barriers to trade and therefore open up our respective blocks to trade across borders. Let me say finally, Your Excellencies, how much I truly appreciate all the heads of state and government who have been listening in today. I thank you for your understanding that we were not able to allow everyone to make a statement due to the limitations of time that were posed by this virtual summit. And I want to thank each and every one of you for your commitment to develop frameworks to foster the unity and shared prosperity of all people of African descent in our two regions. I believe today is a day where each and every one of us can be very proud. A day for the people of African descent to start a new beginning, to chart a new and hopeful future for our people. And I want to thank all those who have put a lot of very hard work behind the scenes to make this day a reality, and a day, as my brother, the chair of CARICOM, has said, a day that we shall be repeating in the years to come. May God bless you all. I thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to seeing each and every one of you in person in the very near future. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless our peoples. Thank you.